Huge news out of Canton, Massachusetts, and it's got major implications for the Karen Read case. This past Tuesday, the City of Canton released an explosive audit of its own police department. They hired an outside firm to take a hard look at how things are being run. And I will say the results were blistering. We're talking about some serious allegations, some findings that were very disturbing, and a report that pulls no punches, but it has things for both sides, for the Commonwealth and for Karen Read. Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Now, the day after that video dropped on Wednesday, I did a full deep dive into that report. It's a 200-page report, and I spent all that time reading it. If you missed that video, I highly recommend that you go back and watch that after we finish tonight's live stream. I walked through the key findings, went to the actual statements in the report, explained how it could be used in the Karen Read case, and highlighted the areas where I believe it actually does support both sides, Karen Read's and the Commonwealth's. But I know that that video was dense. That is a lot to digest, 200 pages of material. It was just a lot. So tonight I'm making it super simple. I'm going to walk you through a clear visual breakdown of exactly how this report cuts and where it cuts hardest. I built a color-coded chart that breaks the audit down into 5 major themes. And for each one, I'll explain how it could be used by the defense or by the prosecution, and why I believe on balance that it's a huge piece of ammunition for Karen Read's team. Now, here's something important, though, to keep in mind, that as of right now, neither side has proposed using this report at trial, at least that I'm aware of. That is not really surprising. It is very detailed. It's a big report, and they are in the middle of jury selection and trial preparation. It takes time to review and strategize around a report with this much detail. But let's not kid ourselves either. The timing of this release was not an accident. This audit dropped on the first day of jury selection. I think that had to have been intentional. And I believe the City of Canton thought it might help the Commonwealth by putting certain issues in a better light for them. But if that was their goal, I think they made a serious strategic misstep. And because when you actually dig into this audit, when you lay out what it says and what it doesn't say, the picture that emerges is deeply problematic for the Commonwealth, the prosecution's case. And tonight I'm going to show you exactly why that is. So stick with me. This is one of those episodes that could change how you see the case entirely. So let's dive in. I want to say a special shout out to the first 5 in the chat tonight: Oklahoma Gigi, Just a Girl, Marcy 1, Lorna Lee, and Camilla Juliana. And welcome to all of you tonight. I'm going back to make sure. Yes. Oh, good. Okay. I do have good video. That would be a shame if I'd gotten that far in and didn't have that. Thank you so much, Bethany, for gifting 10 Lawyer Lee memberships. I really appreciate that. So for tonight, what I want to do is start with some comments that in general help the Commonwealth. And I think they're there for that purpose. And then I want to talk about 5 points, the main 5 points about the Karen Read case. And I want to talk about which way those cut. So let's go ahead and pop the chart in. And what you see initially is general comments helpful to the Commonwealth. Let's make sure. Oh, wait, you can't. There we go. All right. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. All right. So these are really pretty general comments. I'm going to read through them, and then we'll move to the parts that are related to this case specifically. A lot of them were parentheticals, as you can see. Several of them were. And I've got the page number off to the side for those who, like me, are big into looking it up. This is actually the number for the PDF as opposed to the number of the report. Attorneys for Ms. Read claimed that Mr. O'Keefe was assaulted and his body was later placed outside of 34 Fairview Road, Canton, Massachusetts, as part of an alleged cover-up by law enforcement. So that was indeed what she claims. But in parentheses, note, our team has not discovered any information that would indicate that any actions by Canton Police Department officers or detectives were a part of a conspiracy to frame any individual for the murder of Mr. O'Keefe. And from page 96, Canton Police Department detectives said they did not have probable cause to obtain a search warrant and did not request permission to search the Albert house, as they had no information that Mr. O'Keefe ever entered the home at the time. And that was a charge that Karen Reed's team has said, which is, why didn't you at least go in and search the home where supposedly he was about to go into the party? What if he did go in there? We believe he did, and you never bothered to search it. So here's the parenthetical. Note, a search warrant infringes on an individual's Fourth Amendment rights and requires substantial evidence or witness testimony, neither of which was present in this case. Moreover, Canton Police Department did not seek permission to search the house, as there was no indication that Mr. O'Keefe was inside or that a crime had occurred inside the house. Next, the audit team found no evidence supporting claims that any Canton Police Department officers tampered with evidence located at the 34 Fairview Road crime scene. So here's the thing about those comments. I think clearly, and I'll pull out and talk to y'all for just a minute. I think clearly they're helpful to the Commonwealth. I think that was their very purpose. That's why they're there, to say we didn't find this big cover up. We fully support them in deciding not to look around inside the house. But those comments that you just saw right there are very high level. They're very general, and they are pure opinion. Like, in our opinion, legally, you didn't have to look inside the house. In our opinion, in each case, it's an opinion of a person who isn't testifying. I assume that, even assuming this person is an expert, but they haven't been named, the report was not put out in time for either side to name the person as an expert. And so it's really too late to put the person in as an expert. So the things in there that help the Commonwealth tend to be opinions and just very general statements that would be helpful to the Commonwealth, as opposed to what you are about to see, which is the points about the Karen Reed case itself. Those are a lot less general, wouldn't necessarily require expert testimony, and could be used in cross-examination of a witness potentially if Karen Reed's time decides to do that. So I want to add something. Josh H. points out that they said in the beginning of the audit they weren't reinvestigating any crime or case, and their opinion should have been on facts and not feels. I do agree with that. We talked about that last time, and it is true that twice, not once, but twice, they put in there that they were not reinvestigating the case, that this was going to be, and then talked about it. Nonetheless, you are going to see, and people do put that in. And thank you very much, Josh. I agree with that. And I think it's a very important point for people to keep in mind. It is generally the case that in reports like this, that's pretty common to put something like that in, but that doesn't mean there aren't findings within here that might be admissible. But is anybody going to want them admitted? We don't know the answer to that yet, but boy, do they have a lot to say about what happened in the investigation of John O'Keefe. And if you want some more of those exact quotes, you can go back to the last video on Wednesday, and I talk about some of the things that are said just as Josh is discussing. Okay, so let's get started with the 5 points about the Karen Reed case. Interviews of witnesses, crime scene investigation, and there were several points under that, crime scene photography, securing the scene, and the Sallyport video. And I'm going to show you how those break down between Karen Reed's side and the Commonwealth side. So let's add that back to the stage, and let me get it all set up so we can talk. Okay, there we go. All right. So in each of these cases, what I've done, you see the blue type here. The blue type is something where, the way I read it, I think that would be useful for the Commonwealth when it comes to cross-examination or use at trial. That, whatever is in blue, I think would really help the Commonwealth. When it's red, that's something that I feel like comes out on the side in favor of Karen Reed and her argument about the investigation. Because, of course, her argument was that the investigation was very poorly done, that it was insufficient, that it wasn't thorough, and in fact, that it was unprofessional. And that's what she's argued. So let's start with interviews of witnesses, and let's start with the report's recommendations about the interviews of witnesses. First, interviews of witnesses should be conducted at the Canton Police Department whenever possible. These interviews should be recorded and conducted as soon as possible after an event. And when conducting interviews of multiple individuals, interviewees should be separated from each other prior to and during questioning. Detectives should record all interviews electronically when possible. Separating witnesses, suspects is a key factor in corroborating statements from multiple individuals. So the recommendations of the report are that people be interviewed at the police station. Don't do it just right there at the scene. Maybe do a quick preliminary information gathering there, but interviews themselves should be at the police station and not in someone's home. And additionally, that the witnesses should be separated. That didn't always happen in this case. We'll read through some of the things that they specifically talked about here. Now, first of all, Miss Reed and Miss McCabe were placed in the back seat of patrol car 682 right there at the scene. So they were put together rather than separated. Number two, all interviews of critical witnesses, including Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts, should have been conducted at Canton Police Department on January 29th, 2022, after John O'Keefe was transported to the hospital. But in fact, they were interviewed elsewhere. They weren't interviewed at the police station. And it was also the case, as we go down, drop one down, Nicole and Brian Albert should have been interviewed at the Canton Police Department, but they were not either. They were interviewed at 34 Fairview, the home where Brian Albert lived. And so for all of those people, they weren't interviewed actually at the police station. And the report is saying that really probably should have happened. Also, Sergeant Lank was contacted at Canton Police Department by Miss McCabe, who requested Sergeant Lank return to 34 Fairview Road. Sergeant Lank and Lieutenant Paul Gallagher responded to 34 Fairview Road and spoke to Miss McCabe, who advised that Miss Reed stated something to the effect, "I hope I didn't hit him." The reason this is one of the most important pieces of testimony is the various witnesses at the scene, chief among them being Jennifer McCabe, who heard Karen Reed and testified that they heard Karen Reed say, "I think I hit him. Did I hit him? And in this case, I hope I didn't hit him." The actual words she said became really important. But since the interview was not done at the police station, it wasn't on camera, and the words as written down by the police officer had to be relied on, and they were slightly different in different interviews. That became an issue at the trial. And so this report is saying, let's don't do that. Let's do all the interviews at the police station. Let's do them on camera. Let's do them where there's a recording, or at least audio, where there's a recording, and not do it more casually in someone's home. Let's make this more serious than that. So the next area that the report goes into is crime scene investigation. And there were several different points under this. The first was kind of more generally, what should happen when a crime scene is investigated? And there were several recommendations from the audit team. And first, all sergeant and patrol vehicles should be equipped with full crime scene kits, including bags, sealing equipment, and digital cameras. Department phones should be placed in patrol cars for officers to utilize to document crime scenes. Patrol officers and sergeants advise the audit team that Canton Police Department has one digital camera at headquarters. So they were saying that the people on the scene just didn't have the equipment and supplies they needed in order to collect the evidence. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into the statements about what happened at the scene. Next recommendation. Prevailing law dictates that the Massachusetts State Police or the District Attorney's Office will lead death investigations, but it does not preclude the Canton Police Department from assisting Massachusetts State Police in such investigations. The audit team recommends Canton PD should engage and support MSP and District Attorney's Office as deemed appropriate. Now, there's going to be a little bit more explanation of that in the next couple of things that are said. Patrolmen and responding detectives should attend a crime scene preservation class. The Canton Police Department may only process minor crime scenes, but the ability to memorialize, preserve, and maintain the crime scene until a processing unit arrives is crucial. Minor crime scenes may eventually become major crime scenes in the event of the later discovery of relevant evidence. And that's what happened here. That's exactly what the audit is pointing out, is that in this case, what started out as people were just called to a man who was unconscious on the ground, and it morphed into a murder investigation. And it changed over time. And the police, they're saying, need to be prepared for that when they go out. Because they don't know. It may be, and they'll talk about it here, the audit team understands that while the MSP will ultimately handle and process crime scenes involving dead bodies, the Canton Police Department officers will be the first responders and should be equipped to adequately secure the scene and pertinent evidence until MSP arrival. As the first responders, Canton PD officers should receive training on evidence collection and preservation relevant to crime scenes involving dead bodies in the event that the MSP response is not timely to prevent the erosion of pertinent evidence. So they're saying, look, what happened in this case was that the people who came out as first responders weren't prepared. And therefore, the collection of evidence that should have happened did not. That was one of Karen Reed's primary arguments, is that that was a problem, that the evidence wasn't collected properly. We heard a lot about that at the first trial. So let's take a look at some of the things said in this report. And Josh is fully believing, and I agree with you, Josh, that interviews need to be recorded on body cam or audio recording. I agree with you, and so does the audit team. They agree with you as well, that interviews need to be recorded. And the fact that it wasn't ended up creating a problem. And actually, the problem was for the Commonwealth, because Jennifer McCabe had supposedly, anyway, different statements. And she had no way to argue with that because there wasn't a recording of the one that seemed a little bit different. So, yeah, I fully agree with you. Michael asking, when is the next members only live stream? That is a good question. I have that written down here. Monday, the 7th, is the associate and partner level members live stream. And Thursday, the 10th, is all member live stream. So thank you for asking, Michael. I appreciate that. And I'll talk more about what we're doing. Spoiler alert, we're writing a true crime novel. It's been a lot of fun. So anyway, that's next Monday and next Thursday. So thank you for asking. And Dana, thank you so much for the super sticker. All right, let's pop back in over here. First responding officers should have photographed Boston police officer John O'Keefe at the location of where he was found before fire rescue moved him to the rescue. And what a problem that created, right? Because there were disputes about where exactly the body was. And given that they needed to figure out whether he had been hit by a car, it would have been really useful to have known exactly where the body was. But there were some disputes about that. It wasn't entirely clear. And so some problems for the Commonwealth arose because of that. Next, the arriving Canton Police Department units were not properly equipped with crime scene equipment allowing for proper crime scene processing, evidence bags, digital cameras, collection kits, etc. And we all know that they took a few shortcuts. We're about to read about some of those. Due to the heavy snow and winds, detectives utilized a leaf blower to identify evidence. Now, I am aware that in this report, they found the use of the leaf blower to be innovative. They thought it was a good idea. It was a really well thought out way to collect the evidence. I don't agree with that. I put it in red here because I think it just looks bad. Everyone knows that a leaf blower is not an evidence gathering tool. I think it also has some problems because it does blow. It can move things around and can change the scene. And in a scene like this, where it's going to be so important to know exactly where the pieces of taillight were, exactly where the body was, where the glass was that he was carrying in his hand, all of those things, when that's going to be important, then you need the specifics on that. And the fact that a leaf blower was used could change the scene, as I said. All right, Canton Police Department detectives did not have access to evidence collection kits in Canton PD vehicles or at the Canton PD headquarters to secure the blood evidence located near the body of Mr. O'Keefe at 34 Fairview Road. Canton Police Department detectives stated they only utilized solo cups as a last resort to preserve the forensic evidence until it was transferred to the MSP crime scene forensic unit. Huge issue at the last trial. The fact that the red solo cups were used to gather evidence, and it doesn't take and this is in fact one of the things that the Commonwealth argued, it doesn't take an expert or any kind of investigative genius to figure out that, hey, that's just not the level that you want in a crime scene murder investigation. Instead, you'd a lot rather have actual official kits and body bags or whatever you need specifically, not just bags for the evidence. I mean, so those things were not available to them. They came up with a good workaround, the red solo cups, but it's clearly not a professional level investigation. And the report is calling that out. And the report is saying they need kits so that they aren't doing this kind of thing, borrowing cups, solo cups to collect evidence. That's just not the way it ought to be. All right. The audit team, one above. The audit team found Canton Police Department did not follow policy and procedures related to evidence collection and preservation. The audit team found that there were no Bureau of Criminal Identification units initially on scene, nor were crime scene kits available or used for evidence collection. They added this note, and I honestly don't know which way it cuts. If anybody knows, put that in the comments. I don't understand it. Note, according to the Massachusetts Crime Lab, plastic is not recommended for packaging or storing moist or wet evidence items due to the acceleration of the decomposition of biological materials on the evidence. So I'm not sure if what they mean is plastic solo cups should not be used because it would cause it to deteriorate, in which case you would think cups would be better than plastic bags because it's not surrounded by plastic. So I wasn't really sure what they meant by that. If you know, let me know. The audit team did find policy and procedure failures related to crime scene processing. And there's just a straight up comment. They found policy and procedure failures related to crime scene processing. And just think about how that could be used in cross-examination if it were allowed to be used at trial. That, again, is an opinion. So I don't know that the judge would allow this in, but even without that, it could be used by Karen Reed's team to say something like to one of the officers on the stand, isn't it true that there were a lot of failures in this crime scene processing? I mean, you did this wrong and that wrong and this wrong. There were just tons of failures, weren't there? And if they say no, then this report contradicts what they have to say. And so to me, it cut very strongly in favor of Karen Reed. That's how I read it. And you see, we're going to get another blue comment down here. So hang on for that. Hey, Dilemma is a new member. Fantastic. Thank you for joining. And Delia is from the Netherlands. So is our mod Marlon. So welcome, Delia. Our other mod, Mama Pinks. I'm grateful for our mods, and I'm glad to have you in the live, Delia. All right. Where was I? Oh, nope, right here, 103. The audit team has determined that Canton Police Department's internal controls and compliance oversight have improved since the initiation of this audit, and that effective leadership is in place to supervise future critical incidents. The audit team has advised Chief Rafferty regarding our recommendations, and Chief Rafferty has confirmed the implementation of new crime scene procedures. Now, since it's saying everything's improved, you might be wondering, well, why did you put that in red and think that that is in favor of Karen Reed? The reason is because I can see on cross-examination how it can be used. If you've improved something, then there was a problem before. So if the whole point of making a statement about how there have been improvements and that effective leadership is in place suggests effective leadership was not in place, that oversight was not where it should be at the time of this particular death. And that also they have implemented, notice that, new crime scene procedures. So in other words, they themselves are acknowledging that what they had done at this site, they don't think was efficient and sufficient. All right, and here's a statement, though, that I think does cut toward the Commonwealth. As I said, the majority of them I see appear to be related to not to something that would help Karen Reed in the case. But this one I see going the other direction. It is important to acknowledge that despite the challenging blizzard conditions and the delayed response from the MSP, the Canton Police Department officers made an effort to uncover and protect evidence. The innovative use of a leaf blower to systematically search through the snow-covered crime scene was instrumental in uncovering evidence near Mr. O'Keefe's body. Considering the delayed arrival of the MSP and absence of crime scene equipment on hand, the Canton Police Department officers were resourceful in their attempts to safeguard physical and biological evidence. And I bet you anything, we hear more than once at trial the word innovative. The leaf blower was innovative. It was a way to collect this evidence that wouldn't have been possible because they were in the middle of a blizzard. They were in the middle of a snowfall, and they had to get things out of the way. They had to melt the snow so that they could see get down to where the body had been and to what was lying on the grass there. So for all those, I think that clearly cuts in favor of the Commonwealth because it supports the idea of using the leaf blower and the idea that this was the best that they could do. They used what they had. They were innovative, resourceful, and they came up with a way to collect evidence, even though it was difficult. So I draw that one on the side clearly of the Commonwealth. So the next issue I saw was crime scene investigation. Again, still on the theme, not just general crime scene investigation, but training of officers to investigate a crime scene. The recommendation of the report was increase training opportunities for patrol officers and sergeants to access crime scene management training and witness interview and interrogation training. And you can see from some of the statements right below it that why I think that this cuts in favor of Karen Reed. The Canton Police Department detectives need advanced training in crime scene investigations. And I don't doubt it whatsoever. What happened here, and we'll see this develop as we talk about the crime scene being unsecured at periods of time, the Canton Police Department was not going to investigate a murder. Somebody else has that job. The Massachusetts State Police have the job of doing that. And so what happened here was the Canton Police came and did the initial part that they were supposed to do. And then it took Massachusetts State Police a fair amount of time to get on scene. And once they got on scene, it had been a while, and now by then some things were no longer preserved, or they might have been different, or people had been through the scene. And so for all those reasons, it may the point of the report is that the Canton Police never know when they're going to be the first people on scene at something important. It might not look like that from the get-go, but it could be. And so they should be thoroughly trained and ready to initiate the investigation before Massachusetts State Police arrive, because they might have to. Next, it is recommended that the field training and evaluation program be expanded to 8 weeks as opposed to the current 4-week program. An 8-week program expands the opportunity for additional exposure to the various types of calls and responses necessary as a police officer. So just an out-and-out statement that more training would be useful, would have been helpful to them, and would have mattered maybe in this particular investigation. So the third and last on the issue of crime scene investigation is hit and run investigation. And they went through a number of already existing policies, things that weren't followed, but that should have been followed by policy that already existed right there for the Canton Police Department. And so they went through what some of these are, made some notes. You'll see all of this as we go through it. Current policy. Officers should search the area around the scene of the crash, including the automobile or pedestrian which was struck, for physical evidence. And of course, huge problem at the first trial because there wasn't a thorough search. But let's keep reading. Note, the policy makes a point to note that in the event a pedestrian is struck and injured, the officer should ask the hospital, if possible, to secure any such evidence which may have been dislodged from the victim's clothing during transport. Further, officers should request hospital personnel give the victim's clothing and any associated paint chips or glass fragments to police. Next policy. Photographs and measurements should be taken at the scene when required at the direction of the shift supervisor or detective on scene. Officers should examine the person and the clothing of the victim for evidence, particularly for traces of the vehicle. If necessary, an officer may take and preserve articles of clothing or other samples of evidence such as hair, blood, etc. And this was just a huge problem, as we saw in the statement above. There was no photograph that showed John O'Keefe's body at the scene, and therefore it was open to question as to where exactly he was, how he was lying, how far was he from the curb. And they did the best they could to say, okay, here was his shoe right by the curb, here he was, here was his head, but there were obviously questions around that, and testimony of eyewitnesses does not always agree, or scene witnesses, or even law enforcement present on the scene. All right. Another current policy, officers should be observant for potential persons to be interviewed in the area of the scene. Where appropriate, officers should conduct a door-to-door canvass of residences and businesses in the vicinity of the hit and run scene, which didn't happen. And particularly, for example, there was a delay in interviewing some of the people who were present at the party that evening, where John O'Keefe was supposed to be going in and when Karen Reed dropped him off. Current policy, if the vehicle involved in the accident is located, it should be carefully examined. Specifically, dents and body damage should be measured as to width, depth, and pattern. Photographs should be taken if possible. Obtain samples of paint chips, broken glass, pieces of clothing, dirt, evidence of blood, hair, flesh, etc. And notice what happens here, because while this is a Canton Police Department audit, that's just a statement. I mean, imagine how different this case might have been if Trooper Proctor had taken, and he was with Massachusetts State Police, not the Canton Police, but imagine if when he got to Karen Reed's vehicle, he had taken photographs immediately, had taken measurements immediately of the broken taillight. I mean, he took the vehicle. So obviously he thought there was some reason to do that. So what's said in this report indicts more than just the Canton Police investigation. It indicts the investigation done by the Massachusetts State Police as well, because clearly something like obtaining all of these, even things like Karen Reed's argument is that the additional pieces of glass and so forth were broken out in the Sallyport at the Canton Police Department. And there might have been some out, but more was broken out then. But imagine if we knew one way or the other, if photographs had been taken that showed a tiny little crack and later a large one. There just could have been real answers to this that weren't available. And that is a very powerful argument for Karen Reed, because she does have the right to argue that the investigation was insufficient, that it wasn't done properly. And that, like I say, this applies to more than just the Canton Police. All right, next policy. The follow-up investigation, if any, should include the following types of activity: records checks for stolen vehicles, communication of relative information regarding the vehicle and driver to nearby departments, a second search of the accident scene covering a wider area, repeated visits to and surveillance of the scene at the same time of day during which the accident occurred, and visits to local establishments where a vehicle may be located for service. So the parts that really matter the most for purposes of the Karen Reed case are a second search of the accident scene covering a wider area. And we'll see it in just a minute in some of the comments, but pieces were discovered over time, not all at once, not all that day. Additionally, the surveillance of the scene at the same time of day and in repeated visits, any of those things could have been very useful. All right, and so here are some of the statements. Those are policies that are set out in the report. The report says, okay, these are the policies around and the hit and run investigation. This is what should happen in a hit and run. This is how you should investigate as a policy from the Canton Police Department. So here is instead what happened. Canton Police Department took photos and videotaped the evidence collection. Both Sergeant Lank, Sergeant Good, and Lieutenant Gallagher searched the area and discovered a broken drinking glass and small amounts of blood. Canton Police Department detectives reported that they only searched an area around where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, which would not have encompassed the entire yard area. And I don't know that they had to search the entire yard, but the fact that more pieces got discovered over and over again became, of course, a huge issue at trial number 1. So the fact that they're by their own policy, they should have been searching for those things early on. The audit team learned from Canton Police Department that on January 29th, 2024, at approximately 5:45 p.m., MSP Special Emergency Response Team conducted a second search at 34 Fairview Road. During that search, pieces of a red plastic taillight were recovered in addition to a Nike shoe. Over the next several days, as the snow melted, numerous taillight pieces were recovered at 34 Fairview Road by investigators informally as they traversed the area. Approximately 45 pieces in total were discovered. Conditions at the scene of the search were less than ideal. Significant snowfall had accumulated with the center of the street being plowed, pushing snow to the side of the road. And I thought this additional comment was much more slanted toward the Commonwealth, that noting that the snowstorm accumulated at least 20 inches of snow in Canton, Massachusetts. So huge, huge snowfall, more than I think we ever had while I was in law school. I went to Harvard for law school, so I was in Boston near there. I don't think we ever had a snow that big while I was there. That would be truly remarkable to see. That is a huge snow. All right, so but what this is telling us is that the pieces were recovered over several days as the snow melted. And in fact, there's one we'll look at in a minute that was discovered just several days later. Of course, the scene is totally unsecured during that time. What does that create? A lot of doubt about when those got there. Why weren't they discovered in the first place? If there were people there looking for those pieces and they weren't finding them, then why not? Why are they suddenly visible later? There's a partial answer, and that's the snowfall. That's what the answer, according to this report, would be. On February 4, 2022, at 8:50 a.m., Canton Police Chief, and now John O'Keefe died January 29th. So this is February 4th. So we're nearly a week later. Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz summoned Sergeant Lank to 34 Fairview Road to retrieve pieces of what he believed to be part of a red plastic taillight near where John O'Keefe was discovered. Sergeant Lank, along with a Canton PD detective, responded to 34 Fairview Road and maintained a presence and took photos until Massachusetts State Police Trooper Yuri Buchanan responded and took custody of the evidence. Obviously, that became, as we all know, a huge issue in Karen Reed's trial number 1 was this continued finding of pieces. Why? Nearly a week later, is somebody suddenly spotting these? And the idea that maintaining a presence, like now we maintain a presence, now that we've already found something, but it's been a week. But this next statement, I think, clearly pro-Commonwealth. That's why it's in blue. Remember, for anyone coming into the live now, the red is facts that I believe would go Karen Reed's way, and the blue would be facts going toward the Commonwealth. So the relationship of this policy as it relates to the events of 34 Fairview Road is relevant only through hindsight. At the time of the Canton Police Department response to 34 Fairview Road and the discovery of Boston police officer John O'Keefe, the Canton Police Department did not know they were responding to the scene of an alleged hit and run. The call for police came in as a complainant reporting an unconscious male discovered in the snow. Canton Police Department initially prepared for an unattended death and subsequent investigation by the MSP. So I agree with that A little bit. I agree with that in the sense that for the Canton Police Department, it is true that they didn't know what had happened, that they were called for an unconscious male and that they were caught. They just were starting with no real information. However, I think the the location of the body would at least have raised an issue about that. And remember, all of these are also going to go to the point is also something that would be important for Trooper Proctor's investigation with the Massachusetts State Police, because at that point, he definitely thought it was a hit and run. He found a shoe at the curb right next to the curb. And then John O'Keefe's body was further away. So he knew for a fact he was looking at a potential hit and run. And he also took Karen Reed's vehicle because he thought it might have been the instrument of the hit and run. He took that very day. So it took him almost no time to figure out that this was, he believed, a hit and run, which then meant he needed to follow all of those guidelines that were set out. So in other words, at that point, he needed to be searching around the area, including the automobile. He needed to be photographing and measuring the scene. He needed to be observing for people to be interviewed in the area of the scene. He needed to be closely examining the vehicle, including when he first got to it. And if he had done that, we would have photographs that would show us the exact amount of damage that was on that taillight back when. And he should have been doing follow-up investigation, including repeated visits and a second search of the accident scene, covering a wider area. So all of those things, they don't go away, just even if the Canton Police Department isn't maybe on the hook or didn't do anything wrong, it's still going to be an issue in Karen Reed's case, that this report talks about that. So the next issue, and this from Tammy, no proper investigation, just like in the Delphi case. We covered the Delphi case here on the channel too. Absolutely fascinating case. Tammy, thank you so much for your comment and for following not just one, but two cases. I appreciate that very much. All right, so next topic from the report, the audit, was crime scene photography. And here was a recommendation from the report: rewrite the Canton Police Department policy and procedure related to utilization and authorization of personal cell phones to photograph or video crime scenes. All policy should be changed to require the use of only department-issued/owned cell phones to photograph crime scenes. No use of personal cell phones should be allowed. And all Canton Police Department sergeant vehicles should be equipped with digital cameras for photographing and memorializing crime scenes, specifically the acquisition of evidence. Further, this equipment standard should be required by policy. All evidence should be photographed at the time of seizure by detectives and captured on body-worn cameras by patrol officers when possible, just like Josh was talking about a little bit earlier. So that seems pretty basic, right? That you need to make cameras available to your police officers. You need to have body cam. You need to be able to document what they have seen. So here is instead what the report found occurred. The audit team found that Canton Police Department officers are permitted to use personal phones for contacting witnesses or confidential sources during the course of their duty, and utilizing personal phones and to photograph crime scenes as a last resort when department cameras or computers are not available. This is an alarming practice that has become routine out of necessity. So they weren't given the tools they needed, and therefore they had to resort to things like phones and phone cameras. You can see immediate problems with that. One would be, it'd be easy to send that outside the circle of those who ought to know about it. It also, you can see where people may forget to turn that in. It's just a photograph on their phone. It's not an official one. It's not captured on an official piece of equipment owned by the department. Next, first responding officers should have photographed the scene location of Mr. O'Keefe before fire rescue arrived. Canton Police Department first officer on the scene should have photographed John O'Keefe when he was found before he was moved by fire rescue to the ambulance. As we said, that would have made a huge difference, would have eliminated a lot of arguments that ended up happening in the case. Karen Reed's argument will be that she was entitled to a thorough investigation because she was denied the ability to prove her points. She was denied that because they didn't have that evidence. They didn't collect it. So if only they had taken a photograph of John O'Keefe, she would say, then she would have been able to prove that he was such and such a place, that he hadn't been hit by a car. She would be able to do reconstruction of the accident and prove that. And because they failed to document things, she was unable to do that. So this feeds exactly into the argument that Karen Reed makes. All right, again, no photos were taken of John O'Keefe, exact location of where his body was found, and Canton Police Department officers used personal phones to photograph and video the evidence collection at 34 Fairview Road. Pursuant to Canton Police Department policy, a digital camera or laptop computer should have been used to photograph the crime scene. So they knew that. They would have used that according to policy, but they just didn't have it right there. So everybody pulled out their cell phones, and that's what they used. So the next issue, is this my next last? Okay, securing the scene. The MSP, Massachusetts State Police, along with Canton Police Department, should have maintained a police presence at 34 Fairview Road pending the secondary search conducted by MSP crime scene units. You know, one thing I should have mentioned earlier, and I do want to point out, everything I have in this document is an actual quote from the audit report. I'm not just summarizing. I'm not just kind of going around it. This is approximately what it said. No, this is a quote. Securing the scene, the title, that's mine. But what you see under it, a quote. Everything in red, a quote, etc. So here again, we had several comments that talked about securing the scene. And in this case, I thought all of them supported Karen Reed's side. First one, the Canton Police Department properly notified the Massachusetts State Police. However, the MSP were not decisive in their response to the notification. Pending MSP acceptance, it is a Canton Police Department crime scene and should have been handled as such. But it wasn't. What happened was it was darn cold outside, I'm sure. It's snowing. It's the middle of a blizzard, and everybody left the scene unattended for a significant period of time. This opens up a ton of questions about, did anything happen to the scene in the middle of that? Because not until later do Massachusetts State Police and Proctor and the investigators show up. That's when they start finding pieces of taillight. That Karen Reed's argument is someone scattered those pieces of taillight. She believes it was probably Trooper Proctor in that intermediate time when there was no one there watching it. Next, Canton Police Department should have maintained a presence with at least one patrol officer and marked patrol unit at 34 Fairview Road to preserve the crime scene pending further investigation by MSP. Both MSP and Canton Police Department failed to maintain police presence at 34 Fairview Road to maintain the integrity of the crime scene. Both agencies should have coordinated to have an officer maintain a presence at 34 Fairview Road pending the second search by MSP. Notice again, this is not just about the Canton Police. It's also about the Massachusetts State Police. This was left unattended. That's not how scenes should be. Murder scenes should be attended until the investigation can be done, and no one was doing it. Everyone was waiting for the MSP, but no one was guarding the site. Due to the blizzard conditions on the morning of January 29th, 2022, and the coordination of personnel, the MSP waited until after 4:45 p.m. to begin coordinating a secondary search of the crime scene at 34 Fairview Road. Obviously, so it was all day, basically, from about 8 a.m. or whenever they finished up in the morning to 4:45 p.m. that it was unattended. Obviously, something that has given Karen Reed a very strong argument, but she would say also the fact that it wasn't secured means that I have not been given the chance to prove my case. And legally, she is entitled to argue that the police investigation was inappropriate, insufficient. All right, last section, and then we'll do some questions and some more on this topic and this report. The Sallyport video, huge, enormous issue at the last case. And this is what the report says. All video footage files maintained on Canton PD's computer systems of Karen Reed's Lexus SUV while it was housed at Canton PD from January 29th through February 2nd, 2022, should have been requested and turned over early in the Karen Reed case to lead investigators for any action as deemed appropriate. And that didn't happen. And one of the difficult things for this second trial is new video has emerged between the first trial and the second trial. And why? Why wasn't it all produced? What was the reason for holding back? Of course, Karen Reed believes that there are reasons that relate to the fact that she was being set up for this crime. The Canton police would say, well, it just was a mistake. We should have done this. So let's take a look at the comments under here. The first two are in blue. That means I feel like they went with the Massachusetts Commonwealth side. The red one will be in favor of Karen Reed. Note, MSP crime scene technicians searched and processed the vehicle on February 1, 2022. Canton Police Department acknowledged, and the town of Canton has confirmed that one camera in the Sallyport records abnormally in a mirrored fashion. 3 cameras in the town of Canton have been found to have this issue, and this camera malfunction is not isolated to only the Canton PD cameras. So that's just bizarre. I don't know how that happens, that they have 3 cameras that film in mirrored fashion. As you know, huge issue in trial number 1 was the fact that the Sallyport video of Karen Reed's vehicle was mirrored. It was, so you saw it in inverted fashion, like you would see yourself in a mirror backwards. And it might have been a problem in any event, just that they showed that. But it wasn't just that the Commonwealth showed it. It was that the Commonwealth showed it and made a big deal about asking the witness, and isn't it true that no one goes near that broken taillight, to suggest that it would be impossible for anyone to have broken out that taillight to take pieces back to the scene and scatter them around. But in truth, when the mirror part was revealed, lots of people were near that taillight. So it simultaneously made the Commonwealth look shifty and made it look like people had been near that taillight. So, but according to this, at a minimum, according to what this is suggesting, it just flat did record in mirror fashion. They didn't do that to trick anybody. It just happened and no one noticed that. So take it as you will. That is, I think, pro Commonwealth. The IT specialist said most of the cameras installed are analog cameras, low resolution, and have been in place for many years, which would account for how blurry some of those were. On the other side, for Karen Reed, the audit team found there was incomplete coordination requesting all video files in the custody of Canton Police Department regarding the Canton Police Department Sallyport camera footage of Karen Reed's Lexus SUV. So, and clearly there was, right? Because if it had been done properly, all of that would have been turned over right away. There would have been no arguments. There would have been no arguments like, well, what do you have to prove whether Higgins showed up at the station? What can you show us about where the vehicle was and who was near the vehicle and who was near the taillight? But because this dribbled out over time, it created an enormous problem for the Commonwealth during Karen Reed's case. All right, well, let me go through, and I have a number of people to answer questions to. I've put them over here in the super chat. After that, I will look over in the regular chat. If you have a question, if you would put question marks at the beginning, I will more easily spot it that way. So let me mark my spot over there and then come back over here. Josh saying, to this date, MSP crime scene units never had a presence. The CERT team did. And it is true that MSP, so to this date, I'm not sure what you mean exactly, Josh. There's probably a fact that I'm missing there as far as who exactly showed up when. I think the CERT team showed up on the first day. I think I'm pretty positive you're correct about that. Wendy, I find it disturbing this is going to retrial. I don't know what happened to Officer O'Keefe, and he does deserve justice. However, this investigation is convoluted and seems full of reasonable doubt. Certainly true. Certainly true that there is a lot of question. And I'm not going to make a statement about reasonable doubt because I've tried to be really neutral. I know that this is a super hot rod case and that everyone has an opinion. Lots and lots and lots of people have an opinion. I'm trying to make this channel a spot where you can come and get the facts from both sides and feel less of that animosity. I greatly appreciate that the chat really makes an effort for that, and our mods have worked overtime to try to keep the chat in a positive, friendly fashion. So thank you all for doing that very much. Okay, so definitely O'Keefe deserves justice. What exactly will be justice? We have a lot left to find out in this case. It's going to be very different. I think this trial will be radically different. I also think they're going to start pretty soon. Sky Goddess, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for thanking the mods. KS, I'm so glad you like the coverage. Thank you. It was a huge report to read, so I'm glad that y'all like it and are enjoying the coverage. Thank you for saying that. Okay, so I am looking for, oh, good grief, I was in the wrong spot entirely. So I'm looking for the question marks at the beginning, but I'm gonna have to back up a little ways. There we go. There's Mama Pink's dilemma. What will happen if there is a hung jury again after this trial? Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be something? So what will happen is that the Commonwealth will have the opportunity to decide whether or not it wants to try the case again. The Commonwealth could say, you know, we tried it twice, cost us a ton of money to try this twice, and we're not going to do it a third time. That's a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised if they decided that. I would recommend that they do that. If they came to me and said, what do you think, Lee? I would say, no, you've done it twice. Enormous controversy, enormous question, a lot of expense for the community. No, you've covered it twice. But obviously at the same time, you've got John O'Keefe's family wanting a result. And so what they would decide, I can't say for sure, but they would have the right to try it again if that happened. Amanda, could Karen sue the police force if she is found not guilty this time? I think she probably might. I think she might be able to bring a suit. Those are extremely difficult to win, Amanda. And they are because the police clearly have made some effort here. And the chances she could win that, I think, it would be a tough battle, would take a lot of time. Again, if they came to me for advice, I would say, no, do not do that. Walk away. You won, walk away. That's what I would tell her, that just be happy that you got the result you wanted. So that would be my strong advice to her. Dolly wants to know, if I led the defense, what would I do with this report? I would be trying to get it in. I would be trying to get it in evidence, because I think that if you look at the quantity of things that relate to the Karen Reed case that come out on in her favor, on her side, I think it's a ton. I think the cross-examination using this would be fantastic. And I think conversely, most of the statements that help the Commonwealth are very general, very vague, their opinion, and I don't think they'll come in. So that's what I'd be trying to do. It's going to be a challenge, and the judge is certainly going to be reluctant because of its late date and nobody having the chance to review it. But it is a semi-government document in that it was commissioned by Canton. So I will be fascinated to know what people do with this. I think it's pretty important in terms of what it says. Deborah, why are they not throwing out the evidence that was collected wrong, contaminated, not to mention not chain of command on anything? So there are, I think with some of the pieces of evidence, they've been able to at least establish a chain of custody. It's just that it was sitting in a red Solo cup, and no one thinks that was a really great idea. Everyone would rather have had an actual, who knows what, Petri dish, whatever they would normally have put this in. Then by not having that, it opened up cans of worms at trial. That's what we saw happen at trial, because they hadn't collected it in a manner that was really efficient and well done. So, and professional too. So why are they not throwing out the evidence? There may be some that they can't prove, but I think they have the chain. I think it just wasn't done very professionally. I think they're able to say it went from this person to this person's car to this person signed it in. It was in, and at one point they even talked in the report about it being in a refrigerator in the evidence room. So it was kept in a location where the chain of custody was preserved. So I think that's how they have managed to get it in, even despite the problems with the way it was gathered. Emotiva, after the trial, could the law enforcement people be charged with perjury? I don't know that any of them have done anything that would amount to perjury. I don't know. I'm not, nothing's popping to my mind immediately of something that someone said that was literally false. So I don't know of anything like that, Emotiva. All right, looking for question marks at the front of the question. Wendy, will they be able to introduce any of this report in trial? I don't know. I would be trying. I would be trying very, very hard if I were on the defense. I would be trying to keep it out if I were working for the prosecution here. All right, Tats James, how is the defense going to use this on the trial? Well, same question. Carol Sue asking, how is my dad doing? Super well, and we are planning for the next. Not the next, the one and only Dad's 90th birthday video. And y'all have submitted questions. I'll give everybody a chance again if you're new to the channel. And if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We would love to have you back for more. And while we're talking about it, would you hit the like button for the video? I would appreciate it. All right. So, but he's doing great. He was sick nearer to his birthday. So we're going to be doing our What Would You Ask a 90-Year-Old video coming up soon. So we'll find out. What will he tell us? BK Linty asks, thanks for all you do. I don't think they should have taken pictures. If someone gets hit by a car, I don't believe they take pictures. They seem to be trying to resuscitate him. And certainly it would be wildly inappropriate to distribute those, which I think is one of the reasons they don't want them on people's personal phones. They want them on a department phone. But at the same time, I think in terms of documenting the scene, they at least should have documented where the body was and that sort of thing. Okay, so Jennifer, will the investigation of Sandra Birchmore be referenced in the Karen Reed case for evidence of police corruption in Massachusetts? I would be very surprised if the judge let that in. I think that discussion about corruption is going to be there. I think as long as Trooper Proctor makes it to trial, I think we will hear a lot about that. And I think other people will be folded up in that investigation as well. But I don't think we'll really hear about the Sandra Birchmore case. I would assume they're going to focus on this case, on what was done wrong in this case, and maybe the results, such as Trooper Proctor being fired, but not on what happened specifically in that case. But we'll see. It would certainly be interesting. Kathy asks, do you think there could be a deal made that would bring this to a settlement? Interesting question, Kathy. I don't know. My guess is that there's no deal that Karen Reed could live with. She would be willing to accept, is what I mean by could live with. So, because pretty much anything is going to involve some jail time. And I think prison time. I think she would say no to that. Maybe there would be something else they could do. I'd like to help them as a mediator. Maybe I could help them come up with some ideas on that, because that would really be a good solution here. If they could come up with a resolution that doesn't involve another trial. Certainly, if they go through a second trial with the mistrial, they need to think seriously about that. Does anyone know if there were Ring doorbell or cameras at the Alberts house? I believe, Leanne, that there were not, that they looked for that and there were none. All right. Wendy has a question. Who else waits for Lawyer Lee Live to get their case updates? Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. All right. So let's, I'm still looking for question marks at the beginning. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Denise, thank you. I appreciate it. Joseph, it wasn't a question. She was just saying, thank you. Can the defense call the audit firm as a witness if the Commonwealth does not? I don't think the judge will let them call this person as a witness, whoever wrote this. And it's pretty vague, the audit team, for example. I don't think that they'll let an expert witness come in to talk about this particular report. The reason being, it's incredibly late. No one can prepare for this. The experts already designated can't look at, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to prepare. The place where I think it would be most likely to be used is cross-examination. And whether or not she will let them do that is a serious question. I don't know the answer. They have not had a chance, obviously, to depose whoever wrote this. I don't think they'll even know who wrote it. They will know the company that wrote it because they're named, but they don't give specific names of individuals who worked on the report, probably very intentionally. All right, so we'll do, I don't know, maybe one more. Can John's family take out a civil case on Karen? I think they already have, Scott. I think there already is a civil suit which has stayed pending the resolution of the criminal case. And it doesn't have to have the same result. Remember O.J. Simpson, he was acquitted in the criminal trial, but then the case went forward on the civil side. So it's entirely possible for those two things to happen, for you to end up paying a judgment on the civil side, but be acquitted on the criminal side. It can happen. And Amanda, have you ever tried a case so full of weeds like this? This is a lot of weeds. This is a really crazy, really wild case. I think I said thank you to KS. So if I didn't, then thank you to KS. And thank you also for Neurosite Zena, who has been a member for 10 months. Speaking of members, as I mentioned for Michael's question earlier, Monday the 7th, that's this coming Monday, we will be having a special members only live for the associate and partner level members. We will be figuring out who are the villains. We're going to pick three. Well, first, y'all will pick three, and three potential villains. We'll build them out a little bit. We're using AI assisted to come up with our novel that we're writing, our true crime novel. And I'm going to pick one of them, but I'm not telling anybody the one of the three it is. And then we're going to write out the book, and it'll be a big surprise at the end to all of us, except for me. I guess I'll know. So anyway, that's what we'll be doing. We're going to be doing this over a few months. And so that's Monday. And then Thursday, the 10th, all members will be writing our next chapter in the book. And so I will tell you, I'll do a summary of what happened last time. We'll go over the three new potential suspects in the crime. Maybe one of them's not even a villain. I don't know. And then we will move to, so that'll be Thursday the 10th. And anyway, so I'm really super looking forward to that. If you're not a member, you can join by hitting the join button right beside the name of the channel where it says Lawyer Lee. And if you are already, if you are using your iPhone, you are going to have to either go in through your browser directly to YouTube instead of using the app, or just join on your computer. We would love to have you. And so Mad Chatter has gifted a Lawyer Lee membership. Thank you. Be sure to turn on your ability to receive a gifted membership, and our mods will put in the chat how you do that. I'm not exactly sure myself. So hopefully maybe you'll be the lucky one. YouTube selects, they don't ask us. So, and Jennifer wants to know whether I would consider covering the Sandra Birchmore case if it goes to trial. I don't know. It probably depends on when it is, Jennifer. It certainly is an important case. I mean, really important case. So I can certainly understand you're wanting to know more about that because it's super important. Well, I will see you all Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern for our next live stream. I hate it when it does that.